My name is Ray, and I am 32 years old. My identical twin sister, Rachel, has always been the golden child in our family. Growing up, I convinced myself it was my imagination until they crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. They took the money they promised for my wedding and gave it all to Rachel for her shopping sprees and luxury lifestyle. The ultimate betrayal forced me to make the hardest decision of my life. Let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button, and stick around to hear how I finally stood up for myself after a lifetime of being second best. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in suburban Philadelphia with my identical twin sister Rachel. From the outside, we looked like the perfect American family. My father Thomas worked as an accountant, and my mother Diana was an elementary school teacher. We lived in a comfortable 4-bedroom house with a decent-sized backyard, where neighborhood kids would gather to play kickball during summer evenings. But beneath that picture-perfect facade, there was always an imbalance that I felt but could never quite articulate as a child. Rachel always seemed to get the bigger piece of cake, the better Christmas presents, and more attention at family gatherings. When we turned 8, Rachel had a massive birthday party with a bouncy castle professional face painter and a custom cake that must have cost hundreds of dollars. My celebration the following weekend was a simple backyard gathering with pizza and homemade cupcakes. When I asked why the difference, my mother simply said, "Rachel needs a little more attention to be happy." You understand, right, buddy? And I did understand, or at least I convinced myself that I did. I was the easy child, the one who never made waves. I got good grades without much prodding, kept my room clean, and rarely got into trouble. Rachel, on the other hand, was emotional and demanding. She threw tantrums when she did not get her way, struggled in school, and required constant reassurance. My parents justified their favoritism with phrases like, "Rachel needs more support," or "She is more sensitive than you are." By the time we reached high school, the pattern was firmly established. I played baseball and joined the robotics club, teaching myself programming in my free time. My parents attended maybe 2 of my baseball games throughout 4 years. Meanwhile, they never missed a single one of Rachel's amateur theater performances, even when it meant driving 3 hours to see her play a tree with no speaking lines in a regional competition. When I graduated at the top of my class with a full academic scholarship offered to a state university, my parents gave me a card with $50 inside. 2 months later, when Rachel barely graduated with a C average and got accepted to a private college with no scholarship, they threw her a massive party and gifted her a used car to help her commute to classes. The disparity was stark, but I had grown so accustomed to it that I barely registered the unfairness anymore. It was my college girlfriend Amanda who first pointed out how abnormal my family dynamic was. We had been dating for about 6 months when she came home with me for Thanksgiving break during sophomore year. After witnessing my parents fawn over Rachel for 3 days straight while barely acknowledging my presence, Amanda finally said something as we drove back to campus. "Ray, do your parents always treat you and Rachel so differently?" she asked cautiously. "What do you mean?" I responded, genuinely confused. "They spent the entire weekend focused on her. They asked about her classes, her friends, her future plans. They barely asked you a single question about your life." That conversation was like a spark that illuminated the darkness I had been living in. Once Amanda pointed it out, I could not unsee the pattern of favoritism that had shaped my entire life. But even with this new awareness, I continued to make excuses for my parents. Maybe they were just worried about Rachel because she struggled more than I did. Maybe they were proud of me but did not know how to express it. Maybe they assumed I knew they loved me without them having to show it. College was another stark reminder of the disparity. I worked 20 hours a week at the campus computer lab and took out modest student loans to cover what my scholarship did not. Rachel, on the other hand, had her tuition, apartment, meal plan, and spending money fully funded by our parents. When she dropped out after 2 years to find herself, they continued supporting her lifestyle without question. The only family member who ever acknowledged the unfair treatment was my paternal grandmother, Eleanor. Grandma Eleanor had a sharp mind and an even sharper tongue. She never hesitated to call out my parents when she witnessed their blatant favoritism. "Thomas, did you even know Ray made the dean's list again?" she would ask my father pointedly during family dinners. Or, "Diana, I notice you bought Rachel another new outfit while Ray's shoes have holes in them." My grandmother became my greatest ally, the one person in the family who saw me, who valued my accomplishments and supported my dreams. She taught me to value myself even when my parents did not, and she encouraged my interest in technology and programming. When I graduated from college with honors and landed a job at a respected software company, it was Grandma Eleanor who took me out to celebrate and told me how proud she was. After college, I worked my way up from junior developer to senior software engineer at a growing tech firm. I saved diligently, built an emergency fund, and even started investing a small amount each month for retirement. Meanwhile, Rachel bounced from job to job, never staying anywhere longer than a few months before quitting due to toxic work environments or lack of fulfillment. She tried being a yoga instructor, a social media manager, a personal assistant, and a dog walker, among other short-lived careers. Through it all, our parents supported her financially and emotionally, always ready with encouragement and cash infusions whenever she needed them. Despite everything, I maintained a relationship with my family. I visited on holidays, called my parents weekly, and tried to maintain a cordial relationship with Rachel. I never confronted them about the favoritism directly, having long ago accepted that this was simply how our family worked. I had built a life for myself that I was proud of, with or without their equal support and recognition. Amanda and I dated throughout college and continued our relationship after graduation. While we attended different universities, we managed to see each other most weekends and talked every day. She was studying to become a physical therapist, and her compassion, intelligence, and determination were just a few of the countless reasons I fell in love with her. After 5 years together, I knew without a doubt that I wanted to spend my life with her. I proposed on an autumn hiking trip to the Pocono Mountains, getting down on one knee at a scenic overlook just as the sun was setting behind the hills. The orange and red leaves created the perfect backdrop as I asked Amanda to marry me. Her joyful yes and the tears in her eyes made that moment one of the happiest in my life. We spent that evening calling family and friends to share our exciting news, and everyone seemed genuinely happy for us. When I called my parents, my mother immediately put me on speaker so my father could hear too. "We are so happy for you, Ray," my mother exclaimed. "Amanda is such a lovely girl. We knew from the moment we met her that she was the one for you." "Congratulations, son," my father added. "This is wonderful news." Then my mother said something that would later come back to haunt us all. "Remember when you and Rachel turned 18 and we promised to help pay for both your weddings someday? Well, we have been saving up for this moment. We want to contribute and help give you the wedding you deserve." I had almost forgotten about that promise. On our 18th birthday, my parents had made a big announcement during our family dinner. They explained that they had started wedding funds for both Rachel and me, and they would continue adding to them until we were ready to get married. They promised the funds would be equal regardless of who got married first. At the time, the gesture had seemed touching and forward-thinking. "Wow, thank you," I replied, genuinely moved. "That will be a huge help. Amanda and I were just starting to talk about budget and planning." "You just let us know when you start looking at venues," my mother said warmly. "We will sit down and discuss the details." After that call, Amanda and I began planning our wedding with renewed excitement. We decided on a date about 18 months in the future, giving us plenty of time to organize everything. We created spreadsheets to track potential venues, photographers, caterers, and all the other elements that go into a wedding. We were determined to be responsible with our budget, planning a beautiful but not extravagant celebration. Around this time, my grandmother Eleanor passed away somewhat unexpectedly following a brief illness. Her death hit me hard. She had been my biggest supporter, the one person in my family who always made me feel seen and valued. At her funeral, I gave a eulogy that left few dry eyes in the church, sharing stories about her wisdom, humor, and unconditional love. After the funeral, I learned that Grandma Eleanor had left most of her estate to my parents with specific instructions that portions be set aside for both Rachel and me. I received a modest sum directly, which I immediately put into savings. My parents assured me that the rest of my portion was safe with them and would be added to my wedding fund. As Amanda and I continued our wedding planning, I began to notice some troubling signs. Whenever we tried to discuss specific numbers with my parents, they would change the subject or make vague statements about figuring it all out later. I also noticed that Rachel seemed to be enjoying an inexplicably lavish lifestyle for someone who was still essentially unemployed. Within a few months of our engagement, Rachel moved from her modest apartment into a luxury building downtown. She also started driving a brand new BMW and posting photos on social media from expensive restaurants and weekend getaways. When I casually asked her about her sudden prosperity, she vaguely mentioned making some good investments and finally finding her path, though she remained conspicuously unemployed. During a family dinner, I tried again to pin down my parents about the wedding fund. Amanda and I are looking at a few venues this weekend, I mentioned casually. It would be helpful to know what our total budget looks like, including your contribution, so we know what we can afford. My father suddenly became very interested in his mashed potatoes while my mother laughed nervously. "Oh, you know we will help you out, honey. But these things are always in flux. Why not wait until you find a place you love, and then we can talk numbers?" Something in her tone made my stomach twist with unease. Meanwhile, Rachel showed up late to dinner wearing a designer outfit I recognized from a magazine Amanda had been reading. The price tag on that single outfit could have covered our wedding photographer. Amanda's parents, in contrast, were refreshingly straightforward. They sat us down shortly after our engagement and told us exactly how much they could contribute to the wedding. It was a generous amount from people of modest means, and we were incredibly grateful. They also offered to host the rehearsal dinner and helped us research affordable options for various wedding elements. As the months went by, the contrast between our parents' approaches became increasingly stark. Amanda's family was open, specific, and reliable. My parents were evasive, vague, and increasingly unavailable whenever wedding planning came up. I tried not to jump to conclusions, but a sinking feeling was growing in my gut. The final red flag came when Rachel announced she was renovating her entire apartment. I stopped by to see her one day and found contractors replacing perfectly good kitchen cabinets with custom units, tearing out bathroom fixtures and installing hardwood floors throughout the space. When I commented on the extensive work, Rachel casually mentioned that Mom and Dad are helping out a bit. That night I expressed my concerns to Amanda. "I'm starting to worry that something is wrong with the wedding fund situation. My parents keep avoiding the topic, and meanwhile Rachel seems to have unlimited access to money." "I have been thinking the same thing," Amanda admitted. "But I did not want to sound paranoid or accusatory. Do you think we should confront them directly?" "I think we need to," I replied, my heart heavy with the suspicion of what we might discover. "We need to know where we stand before we put down any deposits." Little did I know that my worst fears would not only be confirmed, but exceeded in the confrontation that followed. After weeks of evasion from my parents, Amanda and I decided we needed clear answers before proceeding with our wedding plans. We had found a beautiful rustic venue, a converted barn about an hour outside the city, that would be perfect for our fall wedding. The venue required a substantial deposit to secure our date, and we needed to know exactly what our budget was before committing. I called my parents and arranged to meet them at their house on a Sunday afternoon. Amanda came with me for moral support, and because this concerned her future as well. When we arrived, my mother greeted us with her usual forced cheerfulness, while my father seemed uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact as he mumbled a hello. We sat in the living room with coffee and the homemade cookies my mother had prepared, clearly an attempt to soften whatever was coming. After some awkward small talk about the weather and neighborhood gossip, I decided to cut to the chase. "Mom, Dad, Amanda, and I found a venue we love for the wedding," I began. "But before we put down a deposit, we need to know exactly how much we have to work with. You mentioned the wedding fund you have been saving for us, and we need to know that number so we can finalize our budget." My mother's smile faltered slightly, and she glanced at my father, who suddenly became very interested in a loose thread on the armchair. The silence stretched uncomfortably until my father finally cleared his throat. "Son, we need to talk about that," he said, still not meeting my eyes. "The situation has changed somewhat since we last discussed this." "Changed how?" I asked, already feeling a knot forming in my stomach. "Well," my mother jumped, in her voice unnaturally. "High-pitched family. Finances are complicated, you know. We had every intention of contributing substantially to your wedding, but some unexpected expenses came up that we had to address." "What unexpected expenses?" I pressed, my patience wearing thin. Another uncomfortable glance passed between my parents before my father finally spoke. "Your sister has had some financial challenges lately. She needed help with her apartment, car payments, and some other necessary expenses. We had to use some of the funds we had set aside." "Some of the funds?" I echoed. "How much is left?" My parents exchanged another look, and my father finally admitted the truth. "There is nothing left in the wedding fund, Ray. We had to use all of it to help Rachel through her rough patch. The words hit me like a physical blow. I sat in stunned silence as Amanda gently placed her hand on mine. She could feel me trembling with shock and anger. "Let me get this straight," I finally managed to say, my voice tight with controlled emotion. "You promised both Rachel and me equal wedding funds. You specifically mentioned this fund when we announced our engagement. And now you are telling me that you gave the entire fund to Rachel for her luxury apartment renovation, new car, and designer clothes." "That is not fair," Ray, my mother, said defensively. "Rachel needed that money for essential living expenses. She has been struggling to find her path." "Essential living expenses," I repeated incredulously. "She drives a brand new BMW and just installed marble countertops in her kitchen. Those are not essential expenses." "Different people have different needs," my mother insisted. "Rachel has always required more support. You are doing so well financially. You have a good job, savings, investments. You do not need our help the way your sister does." "So, I am being punished for being responsible?" I asked. "For working hard and managing my money well?" My father finally looked at me. "Nobody is punishing you, son. We just had to make some difficult choices based on who needed the help more urgently." "And what about Grandma Eleanor's inheritance?" I asked, suddenly remembering. "She left money specifically for me, that you said you were adding to the wedding fund." My parents exchanged another guilty look, and my heart sank even further. "That money also went to help Rachel," my father admitted quietly. "She needed it more urgently than you did." At this point, Amanda, who had been silently supportive until now, spoke up. "Thomas and Diana, with all due respect, this does not seem fair to Ray. He has always been independent and responsible, and the one time he asks for the support you promised him, you tell him you gave everything to Rachel instead." My mother's expression hardened slightly. "Amanda, dear, when you have children of your own someday, you will understand that parenting is not always about being fair. It is about giving each child what they need. And Ray never needs anything, right?" Amanda responded, her voice calm but firm. "Because he never asks, because he has always taken care of himself." "Exactly," my mother exclaimed, apparently missing the point entirely. "Ray has always been self-sufficient. He does not need our help the way Rachel does." Something inside me snapped at that moment. All the years of being overlooked, of rationalizing the unequal treatment, of making excuses for my parents, crashed down on me at once. "Do you have any idea how it feels to know that no matter what I achieve or how hard I work, Rachel will always be more important to you?" I asked, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "Do you understand that by constantly rescuing her from the consequences of her choices, you are enabling her to remain dependent and irresponsible?" "Now you are just being jealous and petty," my mother said dismissively. "We raised you better than this, Ray." "No, you raised me to believe I did not matter as much as my sister," I shot back. "You raised me to accept less, to expect less, to believe I deserved less." "That is not true," my father protested. "We love you both equally." "Love is not just a feeling, Dad. It is shown through actions," I said, standing up. "And your actions have consistently shown that Rachel comes first every single time." "So what are you going to do?" my mother asked, with an edge to her voice. "Cancel your wedding because we cannot contribute? That seems rather dramatic." "No," I replied coldly. "We will have our wedding without your contribution. Amanda's family has been honest and generous with us from the beginning. We will figure out the rest ourselves, just like I have always done." As Amanda and I prepared to leave, my mother tried one more tactic. "You know, if money is tight, you could always scale back your plans. A simple courthouse ceremony would be just as meaningful." The irony of this suggestion was not lost on me. "Interesting that you never suggested Rachel scale back her apartment renovation or buy a used car instead of a brand new BMW." We left my parents' house in stunned silence. The drive home was quiet, with Amanda occasionally squeezing my hand in silent support. I felt numb, as if I had just discovered that the foundation I had built my life on was made of sand. "I am so sorry, Ray," Amanda finally said, as we pulled into our apartment complex. "I cannot imagine how you must be feeling right now." "Neither can I," I replied honestly. "I always knew they favored Rachel, but I never thought they would completely disregard a direct promise to me like this." That night, as Amanda slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling, processing what had happened and what it meant for my relationship with my family going forward. One thing was becoming increasingly clear: something fundamental had changed today, and there was no going back. The days following my parents' revelation were some of the most emotionally turbulent of my life. I cycled through feelings of betrayal, anger, sadness, and even periods of numb disbelief. Having spent my entire life rationalizing and accepting the favoritism toward Rachel, this final betrayal forced me to confront the painful reality of my family dynamic. I took a few days off work, claiming a stomach virus, because I could not focus on coding or meetings while my mind was processing everything. My boss, Stephen, was understanding, having met my parents once at a company picnic and witnessed their behavior firsthand. When I eventually returned to the office, he pulled me aside to check if everything was okay. I gave him a vague explanation about family issues, and he assured me I could take more time if needed. "Family stuff can hit harder than anything else," he said with the wisdom of someone who had been there. "Your projects will be here when you are ready." At home, Amanda was my rock. She listened without judgment as I processed my feelings, sometimes ranting about every instance of favoritism I could recall, other times questioning if I was overreacting. She held me when I broke down one night, releasing tears I had probably been holding back since childhood. "Maybe I should have expected this," I said during one of our late-night conversations. "They have always chosen Rachel. Why would this be any different?" "Because this time they made a specific promise to you," Amanda replied firmly. "This is not about reading between the lines or interpreting actions. They explicitly told you they were saving equally for both your weddings, and then they gave it all to her, without even discussing it with you first." After about a week of emotional processing, I decided I needed to try speaking with my parents individually, hoping that one-on-one conversations might yield more insight or even an apology. I met my father for lunch near his office, deliberately choosing a public setting where emotions might remain in check. "Dad, I am still trying to understand what happened with the wedding fund," I said after we had ordered our food. "You and Mom always taught us to keep our promises. This feels like a major broken promise." My father sighed heavily. "Ray, your mother and I never intended to hurt you. Sometimes, as parents, we have to make difficult decisions based on circumstances." "But you did not even talk to me about it," I pointed out. "You just gave away money that was promised to me, including Grandma Eleanor's inheritance that was specifically meant for me." "We were in a difficult position," he replied, lowering his voice. "Rachel was in dire financial straits. She came to us crying, saying she might lose her apartment if we did not help. What were we supposed to do? Maybe help her find affordable housing instead of funding luxury renovations," I suggested. "Or help her develop a budget, or encourage her to get a steady job." There were many options that did not involve taking my wedding fund. My father looked uncomfortable. "It is more complicated than that, son. Rachel has always struggled with life. You make everything look so easy. You always have." "It is not easy, Dad. I just work hard and make responsible choices," I said, feeling frustration building again. "And instead of being rewarded for that, I am basically being punished." The conversation continued in circles, with my father offering weak justifications and refusing to acknowledge the fundamental unfairness of their actions. I left the lunch feeling no closer to resolution. My attempt to speak with my mother was even less productive. She immediately went on the offensive, accusing me of being selfish and unsupportive of my sister. "Family means supporting each other through tough times," she lectured. "Rachel is going through a difficult phase right now." "Rachel has been going through a difficult phase for the past decade," I responded. "At some point, does she not need to take responsibility for her own life?" "Some people need more support than others," my mother insisted. "You have always been independent. Rachel is more sensitive." When I tried to bring up the specific promise they had made regarding the wedding funds, she deflected again. "Sometimes circumstances change, Ray. We never anticipated the financial pressures we would face." Through a family friend who worked at my father's accounting firm, I later discovered that my parents were not facing any particular financial hardship. In fact, they had recently booked an expensive Alaskan cruise for themselves. The financial pressures were entirely of their own making, caused by their inability to say no to Rachel's endless demands. I also attempted to talk to Rachel directly, hoping that perhaps she might show some recognition of the unfairness, or at least some gratitude for the sacrifices made on her behalf. Instead, I found her entirely entitled and unapologetic. Mom and Dad help me because they know I need it, she said with a shrug when I confronted her at her luxuriously renovated apartment. You have always been able to take care of yourself. So you think it is fair that they took the money they promised for my wedding and gave it to you for marble countertops? I asked incredulously. Life is not fair, Ray, she replied, actually rolling her eyes. Besides, I deserve nice things too. Just because you choose to live like a monk saving every penny does not mean I have to. It is not about living like a monk, I retorted. It is about living within your means and not taking what rightfully belongs to others. Whatever, she dismissed, checking her phone as if bored by the conversation. Mom and Dad make their own decisions about their money. If you have a problem with it, take it up with them. The conversation left me feeling even more disappointed and resolved to create some distance from my family. The collective reaction from my parents and sister made it clear that they saw nothing wrong with their actions and felt no need to make amends. Meanwhile, Amanda and I had to reconsider our wedding plans. We decided to postpone the date by 6 months to give ourselves more time to save. We also scaled back some elements of the celebration, opting for a smaller guest list and more affordable options for catering and decorations. Amanda's parents generously offered to increase their contribution, which I initially resisted but eventually accepted with immense gratitude. My friends rallied around us during this time. My best friend Luke and his wife Sophia helped us research budget-friendly wedding options and even offered their backyard as a potential venue if we needed it. My college roommate Jordan, now a talented amateur photographer, volunteered to photograph the wedding as his gift to us. The support from these chosen family members highlighted the stark contrast with my biological family's behavior. During this period, I also began establishing firmer boundaries with my parents and Rachel. I stopped answering every call and text immediately. I declined Sunday dinner invitations citing work commitments or wedding planning. I muted Rachel's social media accounts after seeing yet another post of her shopping spree, courtesy of the bank of Mom and Dad, that sent me into a spiral of anger. Amanda suggested that I might benefit from talking to a therapist to process my feelings about my family. Initially resistant, I eventually agreed to a few sessions. The therapist helped me understand that what I had experienced was a form of family trauma, and that my feelings of hurt and betrayal were entirely valid. What you are describing is a lifelong pattern of differential treatment, the therapist explained. Children are remarkably perceptive of fairness, and when they consistently receive the message that they matter less, it can have profound psychological impacts. Those sessions helped me gain clarity about my family dynamics and recognize that the problem was not my perception or sensitivity, but rather a genuine pattern of favoritism that had shaped our entire family system. With this understanding came a newfound resolve to protect myself from further emotional damage, even if that meant creating significant distance from my family. As the weeks turned into months, I focused on rebuilding our wedding plans and strengthening my relationship with Amanda. The process brought us closer as we navigated this challenge together, reinforcing my certainty that she was the perfect partner for me. While the betrayal still stung, I was beginning to envision a future where my happiness did not depend on my parents' approval or support. Then, just when I thought we had found a new equilibrium, my mother showed up unannounced at our apartment with what she called a peace offering, setting in motion a chain of events that would force me to make the most difficult decision of my life. 6 months had passed since the devastating revelation about my wedding fund. During that time, I had maintained minimal contact with my parents and Rachel, focusing instead on rebuilding our wedding plans and processing my feelings about the betrayal. Amanda and I had found a smaller but charming venue for our ceremony, and we were aggressively saving to make up for the financial shortfall. Our new wedding date was set for the following spring, giving us ample time to prepare both financially and emotionally. On a Saturday morning in early autumn, as Amanda and I were enjoying coffee and planning a hike, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. Opening the door, I was surprised to find my mother standing there with a forced smile and a small gift bag in hand. "Mom, what are you doing here?" I asked, not bothering to hide my confusion. She rarely visited our apartment, and never without calling first. "Can I come in, Ray? I thought it was time we had a talk," she replied, already moving past me into the living room. Amanda greeted her politely but excused herself to give us privacy, squeezing my hand supportively before heading to the bedroom. My mother settled on our sofa, placing the gift bag on the coffee table between us. "I hate that there has been this tension between us, Ray. Family is too important to let misunderstandings come between us. This was not a misunderstanding, Mom, I said calmly. You and Dad made a clear promise that you broke. You took money meant for my wedding and gave it to Rachel. We made some difficult decisions based on the circumstances at the time, she said, using the same evasive language my father had used months before. But we want to make amends. She pushed the gift bag toward me. This is for you and Amanda. A contribution toward your wedding. Cautiously, I opened the bag and found a check inside. The amount was less than a quarter of what had originally been promised for the wedding fund and a tiny fraction of what they had spent on Rachel over the past year alone. Thank you, I said stiffly, unsure how to respond. While the gesture seemed positive on the surface, something about my mother's demeanor made me uneasy. There is one more thing, she said, confirming my suspicion that the gift came with strings attached. Your father and I would like you to make a brief speech at the wedding reception, thanking us for our contribution and support. I stared at her, momentarily speechless. You want me to publicly thank you for giving me a fraction of what you promised after giving the rest to Rachel? Ray, do not be so negative, she chided. This is about family harmony. Several relatives have been asking questions about why we helped Rachel with her apartment, but not with your wedding. It would mean a lot to your father and me if you would help smooth things over. The pieces suddenly clicked into place. This was not about making amends or supporting my wedding. This was about saving face with the extended family who had apparently caught wind of the situation. So this is about appearances, I said flatly. You are worried about looking bad to Uncle Robert and Aunt Carol. My mother shifted uncomfortably. We just want peace in the family. Is that so wrong? And speaking of family harmony, we would also like you to invite your cousins Michael and Daniel. I know you removed them from the guest list, but they are family, and it would mean a lot to have everyone together. Michael and Daniel were the cousins who had consistently sided with my parents, and Rachel dismissing my feelings and telling me I was overreacting about the wedding fund situation. They had sent me several lecturing messages about letting go of petty grievances for the sake of family. Let me get this straight, I said, feeling a strange calm descend over me. You want me to publicly thank you for your generosity, pretend everything is fine between us, and invite people who have been dismissive of my feelings all, so you can save face with the extended family. I would not put it that way, my mother protested. I am just trying to restore peace and harmony to our family. On your terms, with no acknowledgement of the wrong that was done, I added. Before my mother could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. Mom told me she was visiting you today. You better accept her offer and stop making everyone miserable with your dramatic tantrum. Parents are stressed because of you. I showed the message to my mother, whose face reddened slightly. Did you and Rachel coordinate this visit? We may have discussed it, she admitted reluctantly. Rachel is concerned about the family rift too. So you both decided that the solution was for me to pretend nothing happened and publicly praise you at my wedding, I said, the calm in my voice surprising even me. Ray, sometimes in families we need to be the bigger person, my mother said, her tone taking on the lecturing quality. I knew all too well. Your sister is upset that this situation has caused tension. She feels like you are blaming her for accepting help from your father and me. I do not blame her for accepting help, I clarified. I blame her for her entitled attitude and complete lack of consideration for how her demands affect others. And I blame you and Dad for consistently prioritizing her wants over commitments you made to me. My mother's expression hardened. If that is how you feel, perhaps we should make this contribution conditional on your agreement to make peace with the family. Either you accept our terms and help restore family harmony, or perhaps we need to reconsider our involvement in your wedding altogether. And there it was, the ultimatum. In that moment, with perfect clarity, I realized that nothing had changed, and nothing would change. My parents would always prioritize Rachel's feelings and their own appearance over my well-being. I will not be making any speech thanking you for your contribution, I said, my voice steady as I handed the check back to her. And I will not be pretending everything is fine for the sake of appearances. If you want to contribute to our wedding without conditions, you are welcome to. If not, Amanda and I will manage just fine without it, as we have been doing. My mother's face registered, shock, then anger. After everything your father and I have done for you, this is how you repay us, with ingratitude and stubbornness. What exactly have you done for me, Mom? I asked quietly. I worked my way through college while you paid Rachel's full tuition. I saved for my own car while you bought her one. I built my career through hard work while you subsidized her apartment and lifestyle. And when the one time came that you promised to support me equally, you gave that money to Rachel too. You have always been so self-sufficient, she said, as if this were an accusation. You never seem to need us the way Rachel does. I needed you to love me equally, I replied, my voice finally breaking slightly. I needed you to keep your promises to me. I needed you to see me. My mother gathered her purse and the gift bag, her expression closing off. I see that you are not ready to be reasonable about this. When you have calmed down and are ready to discuss this rationally, you can call us. After she left, Amanda emerged from the bedroom and wrapped me in a tight hug. I heard most of that, she admitted. Are you okay? Actually, I am, I said, surprised to find it was true. I think I just gained some clarity I have been needing for a long time. True to form, Rachel called me that evening to berate me for rejecting our mother's generous offer. Do you have any idea how upset Mom is? She demanded. She was crying when she got home. Why do you have to make everything so difficult? Rachel, this is between Mom, Dad, and me, I said firmly. I am not going to discuss it with you. You are making everyone look bad with your grudge holding, she continued, as if I had not spoken. Uncle Robert asked Dad why they were not contributing to your wedding, and Dad had to make up some excuse about financial difficulties. Do you know how embarrassing that was for him? Maybe he was embarrassed because he knows what they did was wrong, I suggested. They did nothing wrong, Rachel exploded. They helped me when I needed it. That is what family does. Yes, family should help each other, I agreed. But not by breaking promises to one member to fulfill the wants, not needs of another. Whatever, Ray. You have always been jealous of me, she said dismissively. Just get over yourself and make peace with Mom and Dad before you embarrass the whole family. I ended the call without responding further, feeling a strange sense of peace. For perhaps the first time in my life, I was not second-guessing myself or wondering if I was being unreasonable. I knew with absolute certainty that I was standing up for myself in a way I should have done years ago. That night, Amanda and I had a long discussion about what all this meant for our future and our relationship with my family. We decided that we would proceed with our wedding plans, independently inviting only family members who had shown respect and support. My parents and Rachel would be welcome to attend, only if they could do so without conditions or drama. Are you sure you are okay with potentially not having your parents at our wedding? Amanda asked gently. I would rather have no parents there than parents who see my wedding as an opportunity to manipulate me and save face socially, I replied. The question is, are you okay with it? Ray, I am marrying you, not your family, she said, taking my hands in hers. I want our wedding day to be filled with people who genuinely love and support us. If your parents cannot do that without conditions, then I do not want them there either. With that decision made, I felt as though a weight had been lifted. The path ahead would not be easy, but for the first time I was choosing my own happiness over the approval of my family. It was simultaneously terrifying and liberating. After my mother's ultimatum and the subsequent fallout, I knew it was time to take definitive action regarding my relationship with my parents and Rachel. Years of swallowing my feelings and accepting unequal treatment had led to this breaking point, and continuing the same pattern would only result in more pain and disappointment. I spent a weekend drafting a letter to my parents wanting to clearly communicate my decision without the conversation devolving into accusations and defenses as our in-person discussions inevitably did. I went through several drafts with Amanda helping me strike the right balance between honesty and respect. The final letter read, Dear Mom and Dad, after much reflection on recent events and our conversations, I have made a decision that is necessary for my well-being. Until there is genuine acknowledgement of the pattern of favoritism toward Rachel and a sincere commitment to change, I need to create distance in our relationship. The incident with the wedding fund was not an isolated event, but the culmination of a lifetime of unequal treatment. While I understand that different children may have different needs, breaking an explicit promise made to me in order to fund Rachel's lifestyle, choices crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed without proper acknowledgement and amends. I am not writing this out of anger or to punish you, but as a necessary step to protect my emotional health and establish the respect I deserve as your son. I will always be grateful for the good you have provided in my life, but I can no longer accept being treated as less important than my sister. If and when you are ready to acknowledge these issues and work toward a more balanced and respectful relationship, I will be open to that conversation. Until then, Amanda and I will be proceeding with our wedding plans independently, and I will be limiting my contact with the family. With love, despite everything, Ray. I sent similar but individually tailored letters to several extended family members who had been involved in the situation, explaining my decision and the reasons behind it. I wanted to ensure my perspective was heard directly from me, rather than through the filter of my parents' interpretation. The responses were mixed. My Uncle Robert, my father's brother, called me the day after receiving his letter. "Ray, I had no idea things were this bad," he said, his voice heavy with concern. "Your father only told me they were having some financial difficulties and could not contribute much to your wedding. He never mentioned promising you a wedding fund and then giving it to Rachel." "It is a pattern that has existed our whole lives," I explained. "This was just the final straw." "I remember some instances when you were kids," he admitted. "I once questioned your mom about the difference in your birthday celebrations, and she gave some explanation about Rachel being more sensitive about these things. But I never realized how pervasive it was." Uncle Robert ended up being one of several relatives who expressed support for my decision and shared their own observations of the favoritism I had experienced. My Aunt Patricia, my mother's sister, sent me a long email describing instances she had witnessed over the years and apologizing for not speaking up more forcefully. "I saw it happening, but I told myself it was not my place to interfere in your parents' decisions," she wrote. "I regret that now. No child should feel less valued than their sibling." Not all reactions were supportive, of course. My parents responded to my letter with a combination of hurt, defensiveness, and guilt-tripping. My father called, leaving a voicemail when I did not answer. "Ray, your mother is devastated by your letter," he said, his voice tense. "I do not know where this is coming from. We have always loved you and Rachel equally. This talk of favoritism is simply not true. Please call us so we can discuss this like adults, instead of receiving hurtful accusations by mail." My mother sent a text message that read, "I cannot believe my own son would treat us this way after all we have done for you. When you are ready to apologize for these hurtful accusations, we will be waiting." Rachel's response was predictably hostile. She sent a barrage of angry messages accusing me of being selfish, jealous, and ungrateful. She also attempted to rally mutual friends to her side, telling them I was having some kind of breakdown and turning against the family. Fortunately, most of our mutual friends had witnessed the favoritism firsthand over the years and were not easily swayed by her version of events. My childhood friend Tyler, who had spent countless afternoons at our house growing up, responded to Rachel's campaign by sending me a message of support. "I always saw how differently your parents treated you two," he wrote. "I remember feeling uncomfortable about it even as a kid. I am proud of you for finally standing up for yourself." As the weeks passed, I maintained my boundaries despite increasing pressure from my parents and Rachel. My mother attempted to use mutual friends and family members as intermediaries, sending messages through them since I was not responding directly to her. My father showed up at my office one day hoping to corner me into a conversation, but I calmly told him I would only discuss our relationship issues when they were ready to acknowledge the favoritism, not before. Through all of this, I discovered a strength I did not know I possessed. In the past, I would have eventually given in to the pressure, accepting their version of reality to keep the peace. This time, I stood firm in my truth, supported by Amanda, my friends, and those family members who recognized the validity of my experience. Our wedding plans continued to evolve. Without the constraint of trying to please my parents, Amanda and I created a celebration that truly reflected us. We found a charming garden venue that fit our revised budget and planned an intimate ceremony with only our closest friends and supportive family members. Amanda's parents stepped up in beautiful ways, with her father offering to take on the traditional role of making a welcome speech at the reception. My Uncle Robert volunteered to walk me down the aisle, a gesture that moved me deeply. "I know I cannot replace your dad," he said when he offered, "but I would be honored to stand by you on your big day." As the wedding day approached, I went through periods of sadness about the family estrangement, particularly as we addressed invitations and realized how many were not going to blood relatives. Amanda found me one evening looking at old family photos, tears in my eyes. Having second thoughts, she asked gently, sitting beside me. Not about my decision, I clarified. Just mourning the family relationship I always wished I had but never actually existed. There is a grief in accepting that your parents are not capable of loving you the way you needed to be loved. I understand, she said, resting her head on my shoulder. It is okay to feel sad about that loss while still knowing you made the right choice for your future. 2 weeks before our wedding, I received a text message from Rachel that shocked me. I am starting to see what you mean about Mom and Dad. They cut me off financially after I asked for money to go to Hawaii. Said I need to stand on my own feet now. Suddenly they are all about financial responsibility. Is this what it feels like? I did not respond immediately, unsure if this was a genuine realization or another manipulation tactic. When I eventually replied with a non-committal, "That must be difficult for you," she did not pursue the conversation further, making me suspect the latter. 1 week before the wedding, my parents made a final attempt to insert themselves into the celebration. My mother called Amanda's parents, directly bypassing me completely. They tried to convince us that there had been a big misunderstanding and that they should be included in the wedding, Amanda's father told me when he called to report the conversation. They suggested they could arrive just before the ceremony and take their place in the front row, no drama necessary. What did you tell them? I asked, touched by his protective instinct. I told them that this was your and Amanda's day, and the guest list was your decision, he replied firmly. I also mentioned that if they appeared uninvited, they would be politely but firmly turned away. I hope that was okay. More than okay, I assured him, feeling immensely grateful for his support. The boundary was set. The wedding would proceed with only those who had shown genuine love and support. While part of me mourned the absence of my immediate family, a larger part felt relief that the day would be free from their drama and emotional manipulation. Our wedding day dawned clear and bright, with perfect spring weather that seemed to affirm we had made the right decisions. The garden venue was breathtaking, with cherry blossoms in full bloom and delicate flowers lining the pathways. As I stood in a small room preparing for the ceremony, I felt a complex mixture of emotions, but predominant among them was a sense of peace and rightness. Uncle Robert knocked on the door, looking distinguished in his suit. "Ready, Ray?" he asked with a warm smile. "As ready as I will ever be," I replied, straightening my tie one last time. He placed a hand on my shoulder. "I want you to know how proud I am of you, not just for today, but for having the courage to stand up for yourself. That takes real strength of character." His words meant more to me than he could know. As we walked toward the ceremony space, I noticed a security guard discreetly positioned near the entrance, a precaution Amanda's father had insisted on after my parents' attempted end run. The sight brought a momentary pang, but it was quickly replaced by gratitude for the protective circle of genuine support that surrounded us. The ceremony itself was everything we had hoped for, intimate and heartfelt. As Amanda walked down the aisle, radiantly beautiful in her simple but elegant dress, I felt overwhelmed with love and certainty. We exchanged vows we had written ourselves, promising to always see and value each other, words that held special significance given my family history. At the reception, surrounded by people who truly cared for us, I realized something profound. This was what family was supposed to feel like. These people, some related by blood and others by choice, were my real family. They were the ones who respected my boundaries, celebrated my successes, supported me through challenges, and loved me without conditions or comparisons. Amanda's father gave a touching speech welcoming me to their family with genuine warmth. "Today, we do not just gain a son-in-law," he said, raising his glass. "We gain a son, period. Ray, you are family now, unconditionally and forever." As I looked around the room at the faces of those who had stood by us, I felt a profound sense of belonging that had often been missing in my relationship with my biological family. My colleagues from work had come, including my boss, Stephen, who had been so understanding during my family crisis. My childhood friends who had witnessed the favoritism firsthand were there celebrating with us. Amanda's extended family had embraced me without reservation. There was one moment of tension when a cousin reported seeing my parents in the parking lot, apparently hoping to enter, despite being told they were not welcome. The security guard handled the situation discreetly, and they eventually left without creating a scene. While I felt a flash of sadness, I also felt vindicated in my decision to maintain boundaries, knowing their presence would have shifted the focus away from our celebration and onto family drama. The weeks and months following our wedding were a time of adjustment and healing. Without the constant emotional drain of trying to earn my parents' equal love and approval, I found myself with more energy and mental space for my marriage career and genuine relationships. Amanda and I settled into married life with joy and mutual respect. We established our own holiday traditions, created our own family routines, and began discussing our hopes for children someday, with explicit conversations about how we would ensure any children we had would always feel equally loved and valued. About 3 months after our wedding, I received a surprising letter from Rachel. Unlike her previous communications, this one was reflective and somewhat humble. "I have been thinking a lot about what you said regarding Mom and Dad's favoritism," she wrote. "After they cut back on their financial support, I have started to see patterns I was blind to before. A family therapist I started seeing suggested I might have been the golden child in a dysfunctional family system, and that this role has actually harmed my development in some ways. I am not saying this to excuse my behavior or attitude, just to let you know I am beginning to understand your perspective." The letter continued with an acknowledgement of specific instances where she had benefited from preferential treatment and expressions of regret for her role in perpetuating the dynamic. While it was not a full apology, it represented significant growth from her previous position of entitled defensiveness. I responded with cautious openness, acknowledging her reflections while maintaining my boundaries. We began a tentative email correspondence that was more honest and balanced than our relationship had ever been before. My parents, however, remained entrenched in their denial. Occasional messages still came through, usually around holidays or family events, always acting as if nothing significant had happened, and showing no recognition of the issues I had raised. Each time I responded with the same calm but firm message, I would be open to rebuilding our relationship when they were ready to acknowledge the pattern of favoritism and commit to change. During this period, I received several letters from extended family members, sharing their own experiences with my parents' stories I had never heard before. My mother's sister, Aunt Patricia, revealed that she had experienced similar favoritism growing up with her younger sister, my mother being the preferred child. "It is a generational pattern," she wrote. "Your mother is repeating what was done to her, probably without even realizing it." These insights helped me develop a more nuanced understanding of my family dynamics, without excusing the harmful behavior. I began to see my parents as flawed humans perpetuating patterns they themselves had experienced, which helped me move toward forgiveness while still maintaining necessary boundaries. I also connected with support groups for adult children of dysfunctional families, where I found community with others who had experienced similar family dynamics. Hearing their stories and sharing my own was profoundly healing, helping me realize I was not alone in my experiences or my decision to create distance for my own well-being. As our first anniversary approached, I reflected on all that had changed in a year. The pain of family estrangement was still present, but it was overshadowed by the peace and authenticity of living true to my values. I had learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to step away from relationships that consistently undermine your worth, even when those relationships are with family. I had also learned the crucial distinction between forgiveness and reconciliation. I could forgive my parents and Rachel for their actions, understanding they were acting from their own woundedness and limitations, without necessarily reconciling or re-establishing the same relationship patterns. Forgiveness was something I could do unilaterally for my own healing. Reconciliation would require acknowledgement, amends, and changed behavior from them. Perhaps most importantly, I had learned that family is not just about blood. It is about who shows up for you, who respects your boundaries, who celebrates your joys and comforts you in your sorrows without keeping score or making comparisons. By this definition, I had a rich and beautiful family surrounding me, even with the absence of my parents and the tentative nature of my relationship with Rachel. As Amanda and I celebrated our first anniversary with a quiet dinner, she raised her glass in a toast. "To chosen family," she said, "and to your courage in breaking the cycle." To new beginnings and healthier patterns, I added, clinking my glass against hers. That night, I wrote one final entry in the journal I had been keeping throughout this journey. I used to think family meant unconditional acceptance of mistreatment. Now I understand that true family, whether of blood or choice, is built on mutual respect, genuine love, and the freedom to be your authentic self. Some relationships may need to end or change for new, healthier ones to begin. And that is not just okay, it is sometimes necessary for growth and healing. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who consistently undervalued you? What was the hardest part of that experience? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. Remember that standing up for yourself is not selfish, it is necessary for your well-being. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for listening, and remember you deserve to be treated with love and respect, without conditions or comparisons.